Just start by saying hello myself. The meeting is being recorded. My name is Michelle Skeen, and I am Rubicon's National Math Consultant. So delighted to be here to host this session. We're going to just begin by acknowledging the Indigenous people of all the lands that we are on today. We have people joining us from across Canada. And while we do meet today on a virtual platform, we want to take a moment to acknowledge the importance of the land, which we each call home. And we do this to reaffirm our commitment and responsibility in improving relationships between nations and improving our own understanding of local Indigenous peoples and cultures. From coast to coast to coast, we acknowledge the ancestral and unceded territory of all the Inuit, Métis, and First Nations people that call this nation home. And I hope that you will join me in a moment of reflection to acknowledge the harms and mistakes of the past and to consider how we can each, in our own way, move forward in a spirit of reconciliation and collaboration. Thank you. So we'll just get started with a few nitty-gritties, and then I'm going to turn things over to Marian. Uh, just to share that this is a brand new feature. Marian's been working very hard all spring to get this ready for us. It will be available on MathUP Classroom. It is an additional purchase, so that's important for everyone to understand. So although it is available, it is a new piece of MathUP Classroom that will come at an additional cost. Important to understand, though, that you don't need to have MathUP Classroom in order to get the numeracy readiness checks. And we're also excited to say that at this time, there's the one version which can be used across Canada. Marian may be speaking a little bit more about that later. If you do have questions about pricing and access, please stay tuned. You can see Howie is on screen now. He is our head of sales and partnerships, and he'll be jumping in at the end to answer some of those questions for you. And so it is now my great pleasure to introduce Dr. Marian Small, who needs no introduction. She is, of course, an internationally renowned mathematics educator, author, and professional learning consultant. She has been doing this for more than 4 decades and is widely considered to be one of the most influential math educators in Canada. She has authored and co-authored more than 100 math resources, including MathUP Classroom and the new Numeracy Readiness Checks. And she has traveled to classrooms all around the world to provide consultation in improving math and performance in K-12. So without any further waiting, I'm going to turn things over to Marian. So thank you, Marian. Welcome.
Okay, so let me share my screen and we will get started. So we are here to talk today about numeracy readiness checks. And so you might be wondering what the heck they are. So what they are designed as what I'm going to call formative tools to help teachers know how ready students are for the math that's coming in the future. Primarily in number, but you'll see there's a little bit of algebra as well. And I'll speak a bit as to why those particular domains. What is addressed is number and operations, and algebra in the higher grades. In this case, I will mean grades 7, 8, and 9. What is different about these checks than others I've seen from other places is that the focus is as much on conceptual understanding as it is on skills. And that to me, as those of you who know me know, is a really important piece. And I'm going to let you see what that looks like. Now, we decided to focus on number and algebra for the higher grades because that's what teachers are the most worried about. So when they ask me, how do I know if my students are ready? And I have worked with a number of school boards to develop tools to help them find out if students are ready. It's always number that they're focused on. So I decided that since that is the concern, maybe that's where we should put our energy. And so there is a lot of attention to primarily number. But again, algebra being so important in the higher grades, there is some attention to algebra, particularly in grades 7 to 9. One of the things I decided not to do is to address absolutely every single prerequisite. So if it's for grade 4, I'm not going to look at absolutely every single thing that a child did in grade 3 or earlier, because I don't feel that we need to do that. I think it's important for teachers to make considered decisions about which things matter the most so that they don't overwhelm kids and they ask the things that really will give them good information without overwhelming those students. In particular, teachers don't have that much time to find out that there are all these problems and go back and handle all of them. So I felt, let's help you figure out which ones are the most important, and those are the ones we'll help you go back and work with. Um, I have tried to decide what I think is the most important stuff, and I've flown this by a number of consultants, and I feel like we're in the right ballpark. Now, they were created so that students are actually using what we call open response. That doesn't mean an open-ended question necessarily, but it means that they say something. They don't just click a multiple choice question. And that was important to me because I think the only way we really learn about our kids is hear their voices. So it feels to me that it was important not to have lengthy questions, but questions where a teacher would hear what a child is thinking. And so I did that by not having as many questions, limiting the number, but making sure they were the important ones and I really heard the student's voice. Now, they were created by looking at each grade level and looking at the year or two before and focusing on the concepts and skills from those years that I felt were really important. And we piloted them. I have piloted one version of them in Quebec. And we've been working on this for quite a while, so we have quite a lot of data on that. We've piloted other versions. One of the ones you're going to see a little bit of today in a more limited fashion, but we have actually tested these to see how they work. So this is what we're providing. So I said the short answer is we're giving you a lot. So let me tell you what the lot is. Um, First of all, a lot of teachers, and this is how this project actually began, are looking for what I'm going to call a quick check at the start of the year. They're meeting new kids and they want to know, who do I have in front of me? Like, where are these kids at? Are they behind? Are they ahead? Are they like, where are they? But they don't want to take forever to gather this information. So we ended up calling it a snapshot. It's a quick check. The tool has 10 to 13 questions, so not lengthy, per grade, focusing on the concepts and skills that I felt were most critical and the questions that would give me what I felt was the best information about how ready students actually are. But we also provided what I'm calling a deeper dive. So for the deeper dive, we looked at the various topics in number and algebra the teachers might be teaching in their grade. And we created small sets of questions that could be used throughout the year. So you would do something on fractions right before you did fractions, or something on multiplication right before you did multiplication. That gave you more information about that particular part of the domain, but you wouldn't inundate kids with all of it at one time. You would just check, are they ready before you were ready to do that work, and go back if you wish. It's very much in the spirit of the diagnostic tasks for those of you who know MathUP, the same idea. So they will be used as sets of questions throughout the year prior to instruction on topics. Even there, I tried not to overkill. I feel that if you ask kids too many questions, you don't get the best information because they just tune out after a certain number of them. So again, we have limited numbers. One of my favorite parts of this is my belief that
I'm
it's
sorry.
important for children
I'm like,
to really
wait.
understand the question that they're being asked before we're asking them to answer it. So we have a culture in math where we present a question to a kid and we just wait for them to figure it out. And maybe you entertain a few questions they have, but your expectation is that they figure out what you're asking. I have a different belief. I believe that we should rephrase the questions in much more natural language so the kids really know what I'm asking them, and then we'll see if they can do that. So we have provided teacher notes to tell teachers how to do that, to help them do it, and to feel confident that they have permission to do that thing. Um, I believe that I want to know about the math they can do, not their reading comprehension, and that's why I've done what I did. We, of course, provide scoring guides to inform teachers about the intention of each question. Like, why did you ask that question? Like, what were you really trying to find out? So that when you look to score it and you know what the intention is, then you can figure out what to ignore, not what really makes a difference. So we're trying to help you by see what the intentions of the questions are. And I will be showing you examples of all of this in a minute. We also tell you that you are a professional. And even if I give you a scoring guide, if you have a different thought about something, go with your thought. Like you heard why I said what I would do, but you might see things that I didn't see because I'm not looking at a particular paper. And so we're also, just like we do with MathUP in general, honoring your professional judgment. And the part that I think teachers are really going to be happy about is what we call targeted support. So what we've done is provided a chart that explains the intention of each little question or group of questions, some indication of the challenges that we anticipate some kids will have, but most importantly, what are you going to do now? And we provide for you supports to help children if they are struggling with particular areas. We reference lessons in Math Up, but I've provided and written other activities as well for each of those questions. The way we've been administering them is advocating interviews for grade one. I don't believe you, I think you have to talk to a 6-year-old. So we've tested them out. They only take 10 minutes. It hasn't been lengthy, and teachers are feeling fairly comfortable with it. And you'll see some examples of some of the questions in a couple of minutes. For the higher grades, we're suggesting that you could give them to the whole class. And of course, you'll still have to run around and answer some questions. We did suggest, and we're doing this in Montreal, that for grade two, you might decide to work with a group of kids at a time because their reading is a little more, a little less good, and you might want to help them through the questions a little bit better, and you could do it in a small group with those students. Now, here's what they look like, which is why I think you're here today. So here are some examples of some questions from grade one. So this is what they will look like when the kids see them. They'll see a question like that, and we'll ask them how many there are because we want them to be able to count. But then we're going to ask them this question and say how many there are, because I want to see if they realize that you don't count the big things any different than you count the little things. And the only way I'll find that out is if I make sure I ask a question like that. Or we asked a question like this one, are there more red or are there more blue? And like, how do you know? And so we want to see if kids can just look and say, well, like I can see there's like a whole lot more blue. I don't even need to count them. Or if they count them, we want to see the way our kids respond. I want to see if I already put them so they're already in one-to-one correspondence. Do they do better with that than over here where they're not already in one-to-one correspondence? So I'm being quite intentional about what I'm finding out with each question. Um, Here's some sample questions in grade three. This one is very straightforward, sort of. Write this in standard form, but it doesn't say 100, 3 tens, and 5 ones. It says 100, 3 tens, and 15 ones. Like, do they realize that they have to do trading? And in the notes, we make sure kids understand what standard form means. Like, that's not something they're going to have to guess. We'll make sure they understand. Notice in the second one, 14 tens and 12 ones, you have to do trading. So I'm really looking at place value ideas that are conceptual, not just procedural. Here's another question in grade three that I think is conceptual. Do you need to know the missing digits to decide which number is greater? So there's obviously a number that's in the 100s and there's a number in the 50s. And my question to kids is, do you need to know what those missing numbers are to know who's bigger? And we're hoping kids know you don't need to know that, but that's what we want to find out. Here's a question that's more straightforward. Please subtract, but do it in two different ways because we want to see if students have any flexibility, um, even though they will be certainly possibly doing a standard procedure for at least one of the ways. We asked something like this one. Make up a story that you could solve by subtracting 100 minus 75. So do kids understand the relationship between mathematical expressions and situations? But instead of giving them a word problem to read, we do it the other way. If you see the expression, can you think of a situation for me? So this is also conceptual. Here's a couple from grade 7 because I just wanted you to see a spread. Please put these fractions in order from least to greatest. It's very straightforward, except I was careful to include mixed numbers and fractions less than 1 and fractions more than 1, because we know from research that mixing them up makes it more challenging for kids and we want to know where they're at. Is there a decimal between 42 hundredths and 43 hundredths? A lot of kids say no. We don't want them to say no, but we want to see where they're at on a question like that. This one asks them to draw a sketch to show me why 7/8 minus 3/4 is 1/8. So I didn't ask for the answer. I said, show me why that makes sense. So there's a bunch of places where kids are expected to do sketches. There's a place value question that you're looking at the bottom. How come to add 4,000s and 8,000s, you can just figure out 4 plus 8, but to add 1,000, you can't do 1 and 42 thousandths and 9/10ths by just adding 10, 42 and 9. So how come things are different? So do they understand that when we add decimals, we put like things together? Show two different ways to figure out the solution to an equation is just so you see a peek at an algebra question. Now, I mentioned that there were notes, and here's an example of some notes from grade 2. So what you're going to see on the notes is a copy of the question in the left column. In the middle are mine talking to you. So you might provide counters and 10 frames so kids can move things around. Remind kids to think about whether they would count each counter separately or do something else. Ask kids to tell you how high the count is after they count each amount separately. So I don't feel guilty reminding them you don't have to count them one by one. We're actually saying, like, that's okay. And we're giving you the intention of the question. So you see, do students realize that you can count more efficiently? And I'm saying, and it's fine for you to remind them they could. You didn't tell them what to do. Here's a teacher note in grade 5. The question was, look at 22. Why might someone figure out 2,135 by 7 plus 750 by adding 800 first, not 750? So we're telling you, reinforce that kids need to do two things. First, they have to give a reason that they would add 800. Then they have to tell, like, what would they do to fix it up? And then we give you the intention next to that. And here's what a scoring guide would look like. So here you'll see the answers happen to be in red. So we're saying, look at the blocks, write each of the numbers you would say when you count the blocks. We show you in red what a kid might say, but look at the notes. It is okay if kids don't say every single number, but they demonstrate some counting. If there's a minor error, that's okay. Like, still give them the marks. So we're trying to help you see what the intention really is so you can not panic about tiny things and focus on bigger things. We're telling you how many points everything is worth. And at the end of each section, there'll be something called point summary, where I tell you how many points are in the section and telling you where I think I'd worry about kids. Like, if your score is below this, I am worried some, and you might use the targeted support I'm providing. And I'm saying, if you see these scores, you might think things are just like amazing, and then there's in between. So I didn't do level 1, 2, 3, 4. I did amazing, I'm good, I'm worried. And that's what those little sections will tell you. And then is the targeted support. So what I didn't do is write MathUP again. So I didn't write whole big long lessons because we've already provided those to you in MathUP. But I have given you some activities to do and some connections to MathUP. So I know this is tiny, but I just want to show you the format. So if you look there, the question number is there. It says this was the intention of the question, to find out if kids can do this. Then there's a column that says this might be the problem you see. And then you see a whole lot of blurb, which you are not going to read now, where I give you an activity to do with the kids to kind of help if you see that situation. And at the bottom, you'll see a MathUP classroom connection. Sometimes it's to one lesson, sometimes it's to more than one lesson, where you can go back and do more activities that might be of that same nature. So again, we didn't want to write a whole nother resource, but it gives you enough to kind of deal very focused on what the problem is, and then a little bit on the connection.
Wonder.
What we've learned about how they have worked when we've tried them with people. This was sort of the nicest thing that happened. One of the consultants I'm working with in Montreal administered the grade two to some teachers, and the grade one teachers were there and said, "Oh, I'm supposed to ask those kind of questions." And we were like all excited because that was the whole point of this, to help teachers know how to ask these kinds of questions so that when they get to gate two, there won't be problems. So that we're trying to use this, I'm going to say, as a PD tool as much as it is information and data for you to collect to report to somebody about. So I think I want to summarize by saying here are the big things for me. It's focused on concepts, not just skills. There are skills, but it's not mostly skills. I'm focused on hearing what kids say. It doesn't have to, it can be on paper, it can be a picture, it can be talking, but I want to know what they're thinking. I don't want just them to click A, B, C, or D. I thought it was critical to have not too many questions. And I thought it was critical to focus on what matters most, not everything under the sun, because some things just matter more than other things. So I'm going to stop there because we only have a little bit of time. And you're going to find out some stuff about, the nuts and bolts of how everything works. But if you have any questions on kind of what I said about what's there, what it looks like, and you only saw a little bit, obviously, I'm happy to answer. You need to know that this afternoon I finished grade 9. So I am like done. It has to be edited and doesn't look pretty quite yet. It's on its way. But it is like in pretty good shape. And I literally did finish the last one today. So we've had enough experience that I feel like it's doing the kinds of things I was hoping for. Okay. I turn it over to Michelle, I guess.
We'll just see if there are any pedagogical questions first. That's what Marian asked. Was there anything else you were wondering about um, the readiness or anything of that nature? I know some, Marian, a question that came up before that maybe you wouldn't mind clarifying again was what is, I know you talked about other diagnostics. I had a educator wondering what's the difference between the numeracy readiness check and the diagnostics that are in MathUP Classroom?
The diagnostic in MathUP Classroom, I mean, they serve the same purpose. But I just ask different kinds of questions. Often the ones in MathUp Classroom might be about understanding as well as skill, as well as problem solving. These ones tend to focus only on understanding and skill, not as much on problem solving. So that's one of the differences. So you could certainly use both pieces to get more information.
Great. I'm not sure if you can see the chat, but we have some questions coming in now. One is, how do the readiness questions align with Prime, the resource?
Okay, well, I haven't thought about Prime in a very long time. So Prime is probably in my soul, and it would only align because it was already in my soul. I definitely didn't like look at it to make the resource. I looked more at curriculum and where curriculum is. Um, we will make sure that we recognize which questions are appropriate for which grade, for which province. So what I can tell you is that all the math stuff that I have really applies to all provinces, but it's not always in the same grade in every province. And so it'll be our responsibility to make sure that you know which ones belong in your province, but all the content, I'm positive, works for all provinces.
Yeah, Marian, maybe I know, I think you and I chatted about this a little bit. It's not so much about following curriculum expectations. I think this is why it's a readiness check. Is that right? It's not so much about checking off curriculum.
It's not so much about checking off the curriculum outcomes, but it partly is. So it is, this is our expectation that kids would have met these ideas and they should have them now. And so if your particular curriculum hadn't addressed a particular idea, that would be a problem. So it feels to me that there might have to be some um, clarity about in BC, this question should appear in grade 5, not in grade 6, or that sort of thing. But the actual mathematical content, I think, will be fine everywhere.
Mm. Thank you for that, Marian. Any other questions for Marian? Okay, well then, and of course you're still welcome to add them to the chat as we move along. But so then at this time, I'm going to introduce you to Howard Bender, who is our Director of Sales and Partnerships. And he is here to talk to us a little bit more about things like pricing and access. Thanks, Howie.
Thank you, Michelle. Thank you, Marian. We're really excited to share this with you, and we hope you're also eager to share this with your schools and excited about what you've heard today. Uh, First, I just want to say a special thanks to those that have been part of this journey. Many of you have been sharing your questions, your needs, and really helping us understand how we can best support you in your schools. And from just being part of those discussions all the way to field testing, uh, thank you very much to all of you who have been involved. And we think you'll be really pleased with the result. We've really taken quite a bit of effort, and Marian has put a lot of thought and intention in responding to the feedback that we received along the way. So as mentioned earlier, there's seamless access through MathUP Classroom. It's a subscription that will automatically enable the readiness check within an account. But it can also be accessed as a standalone feature. So it is easily scalable across your schools, whether you have existing licenses today or if you're new to the MathUP Classroom family. It's been priced with educators, and I'll say with your limited budgets in mind. We understand that finding an opportunity to invest in uh, anything right now isn't always easy. So we've been able to keep it at $299 per school. And for those that are making an investment at the district level, we're discounting it all the way down to $199 per school when purchased for multiple schools. Every educator at the school gets access, whether they have a license or not. And if you're interested and intrigued, your next step is to reach out to your sales rep, many of them on the call here with us today. If you're unclear who that is, sales@rubiconpublishing.com, and we will put you in touch with the right person right away. Thank you.